The neighborhood I grew up in is rough, to say the least, and they are rough dudes, to say the least. But what we always had in each other was loyalty. And, even though there was a lot of bad human behavior performed by us at that time, I worked at the surf shop, breaking into cars, stealing people's money. If anyone stole a car stereo, they brought it to me. Had a lot of friends die. There's a lot of violence, a lot of fighting, a lot of gang activity, just a lot of crime. And we participated in all of it. So yeah, when he died, it was like a big pivot for a lot of us. So then when I went to his funeral and I looked around and I was like, man, if this were me, I don't think a fraction of these people show up for me because I'm just kind of yeah, anyways, I just kind of had this moment. I was like, man, I got to grow up, I guess, or, make changes.
Brad Goodwin grew up in chaos, but he broke the rules and beat the system to reverse engineer the life he wanted.
I never really knew what I wanted to do, so I just kept kind of trying to do the next thing that would keep doors open for me. I can't remember how old I was, but I was getting a check for like $450,000. Like this whole find your passion thing it just may not be there for you. It isn't for a lot of people. And then the other part of that is, but when you're evaluating what to do, choose.
Just a quick message before we get into it. Many of you who watch or listen to the Making Mentors podcast aren't yet subscribed, and I would be super grateful if you would go ahead and hit that follow or subscribe button. Thank you so much for your love and support, and hope you guys enjoy this next episode. Brad Goodwin.
Yeah, bud. Thank you.
So Brad, can you just lay it out for me how you describe yourself to your friends or people who are just meeting you for the first time?
Interesting. Well, my tagline is just I'm a stubborn old Portuguese. So I'm just stubborn enough to try hard things and not give up on them.
Yeah.
And I'm just dumb enough to think I can pull some things off. But I'm also aware enough to know that I really can't pull anything off without surrounding myself with good people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You were actually the next nominated mentor coming off of the last episode with Grant Talley.
Yeah.
I think it would be useful for people who don't know you, right, to give a little bit of the backstory of Brad Goodwin.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we'll walk through kind of these key things and these themes that come up in your life that you feel obligated to share and pass on to others.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, overriding theme is, like, to whom much has been given, much is expected. And I've had a lot of people help me. I'm originally from Boston, born there, moved out of there when I was like 6, but I still have a lot of like emotional connectivity to Boston. That's where my dad's side of the family is, and a lot of memories still, even at that age. But then my dad's career moved us out to Mission Viejo, Orange County. And then we were there for all through like my early years, and on the last day of 8th grade, we moved to Ventura. And Ventura became like the most formative experience of mine. And the ethos in Ventura is one of loyalty. The guys I grew up with, the neighborhood I grew up in, is rough, to say the least. And they are rough dudes, to say the least. But what we always had in each other was loyalty. And, even though there was a lot of bad human behavior performed by us at that time, they always remained loyal to me and looked out for me, and et cetera. And so I've always kind of just carried that. Like, that's my like friendship gauge is loyalty.
Yeah.
I put that above a lot of things. And so when I meet people, like younger people, anyone in the gym or anyone in life, I try to then also get to know them and their journey and like what motivates them, where are their values. And I think about the people that helped me along the way. And so I just feel like that's my obligation. But I don't do it out of like, to be a good person or anything. I do it also because like I sincerely want to help people, because I think it's hard. I think being a young man is hard. I think being a young person is hard, but in the last kind of decade or so, being a young male has been faced with a lot of challenges. So yeah, I just try to help wherever I can. In Grant's case, it's just too easy. I mean, that guy's just too darn likable. So
Yeah.
he's just a good dude trying to do the right things. I always try to encourage young people to take risks and bet on themselves. And so anytime I can help someone do that, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. That's great. So let's move chronologically from Ventura all the way up to San Luis Obispo. And now there's been a lot, right? There's been a long journey.
Yeah.
So take me in the next progression from there to here.
Yeah. So the Ventura transition to like getting to San Luis Obispo, like my Ventura high school years were interesting, adventurous, crazy, bizarre. That environment I grew up in and the people I'm still really, really close to, like we just went through a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of violence, a lot of fighting, a lot of gang activity, just a lot of crime. And we participated in all of it for the most part. I was always a peripheral kind of satellite player in it. Like I always knew there was a line for me that I wasn't willing to cross. Danced on it a couple times. But always kind of had a feeling that I was meant to leave and go do something. I just didn't know what it was. And then those types of behaviors can be relatively novel and interesting when you're 16, 17, 18. But when you get into 19 and 20, you start going, well, if this doesn't turn, it's permanent, right? Like, then, you start seeing friends get locked up. I had a lot of friends die. Like a disproportionate amount of friends die at that time frame. Like 10 to 15.
Wow.
From a relatively small neighborhood. I grew up down in Pierpont Beach in Ventura. And you start to see that, and obviously experiencing that kind of loss is tragic. And then one of my best friends, I was 20, he was 18, he hung himself. And we talked a little bit about it, but that was a significant moment of like reflection. It was obviously a tragic loss, and I went through those whole emotions too of being like sad and angry at him and trying to process that because he was such a dear, dear friend. He was like a brother to me. He was from a broken home, not much relationship with his father, single mother raising him. He had a younger brother. His mom was super cool. I was kind of the older friend who was the most responsible of the crew, so she trusted in me.
Yeah.
We built a half pipe in his backyard. That was the hangout spot. So yeah, when he died, it was like a big pivot for a lot of us because he was just such a rad dude. So then when I went to his funeral and I looked around and I was like, the outpouring of love for him, because he was born and raised in Ventura. So all the kids that had been on his sports teams or knew him from the different schools he went to, like there was just so many families there. And I remember kind of looking around going, man, this is wild. Like if he knew how many people loved him,
yeah,
maybe he could have fought through whatever he was feeling. And he was heartbroken at the time and he was going through all kinds of stuff. But and then I kind of reflected, being a partial narcissist that I am, on like, man, if this were me, I don't think a fraction of these people show up for me because I'm just kind of an ass. And I really was at that time pretty much an ass. Like I was just a lot of anger. I had a lot of fear, which caused a lot of anger. I had a lot of insecurity, which caused a lot of anger. And I was small and like always felt like, not tough enough. And like all those insecurities that we have as a young man, especially in an environment that's full of like tough dudes, like it created anger in me.
Yeah.
And then, the violence of that neighborhood also created an outlet for me, not even necessarily by me being violent, but just being around it. And so, yeah, I would say that that kind of moment helped me reassess, like, okay, I need to change, basically is what it meant. I need to change how I treat other people. I need to change how I treat myself or invest in myself. And I need to start applying myself because I wasn't doing anything. I worked at the surf shop. I was jacking around on the beach, breaking into cars, stealing people's money.
Yeah.
Just an ass. Like, we did some dumb shit. If anyone stole a car stereo, they brought it to me because I knew how to put car stereos in. So I was always putting someone's stolen stereo in someone else's car.
Yeah.
If they couldn't get the stereo out of the car, they'd take the car so I could take the stereo out.
Wow.
I mean, we did a lot of dumb shit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyways, I just kind of had this moment of like, man, I got to grow up, I guess, or, make changes. And so I started applying myself in school, which for me meant cheating off the right people in school because I was never good at school. So I had been in junior college for like 2 years on academic probation, just doing nothing.
Yeah.
And then my buddy passed. My buddy's name was Gus Brown. Several years after that, his brother passed too of an overdose. It's tragic for that family. So I finally started applying myself in school, got my grades up a little bit, and I applied to 2 universities, UCSB and Cal Poly. And by the grace of God, I got accepted at Cal Poly with like a 2.7 GPA into the speech department, which I had no interest in doing, but I just figured no one else is going to apply to do speech.
Yeah.
So then I quickly transferred from speech to political science because that was the only other major I could do without doing math because I sucked at math. And yeah, so that's how I got to SLO. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I vividly remember coming to SLO and going to like my first house parties as a college student and like people being friendly and smiling and like not knowing you, but happy you're at the party. And it was just so foreign to me because like,
Yeah.
we're used to, you go to a party and you're just fighting people.
Yeah.
And like, that was the whole thing. So it was a very refreshing change when I came here. I do remember being like, it was actually at Gus's house. I remember one night, like almost having like an emotional breakdown. Like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, there's just chaos around me. Like, everyone's doing drugs and partying and fighting. And my brother was partying. And I was just like, I also had this moment, I was like, how did this end up happening?
Yeah.
Like, this didn't seem like the trajectory. And I was always worried about Gus and my friends too, because like I was always like, again, I was like a little bit of a satellite, and I didn't drink,
Yeah.
and everyone was drinking all the time, and like I smoked some weed, but not a ton, and that was also another kind of like factor is, there's a lot of alcoholism in my family. And so products of alcoholism are either usually become alcoholics or they have a strong need to control or an aversion to alcohol. So in my early life, I was like known for being the guy that was always sober. And it wasn't from a position of like strength or nobility.
Yeah.
Or following the rules, because I never was a rule follower. It was my own fears and control issues again. It was almost like my own anxiety that made me be that way. And it wasn't until I was like well into late 20s, early 30s that I even started drinking and felt like I could drink it. I could drink and enjoy it and not feel like I'm becoming something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was always an interwoven part of my story too.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then I got my degree in political science at Cal Poly, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what landed me here. That was in 1991.
There's a couple of things there that are worth exploring before we kind of move on to the next phase of your life. But one of them, I think, is the big pivot in your life where you decide that things have to change. I always hear stories like this from people, but I think the hardest part, maybe for them even, is defining what it was that they did that was able to change, like actually make the change in their life. You know, was it
Yeah.
started waking up earlier? Was
Yeah.
it trying to control your habits in some way?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Um, I became pretty intentional,
Yeah.
even to like to who I was spending time around and what I was doing with that time. And so I actually kind of like even changed hobbies.
Yeah.
I went from, I was always a surfer and a skateboarder and played in a little punk rock band and hung out at the beach. Like that was my jam. And I still loved all those guys that I did all that with, but I was like, I have to like start changing my environment and the people around me. I want to start hanging around people that have the habits that I need to form. So I started hanging, and I was always someone who could kind of be friends with everyone. So I was friends with the jocks, I was friends with the surfers, I was friends with the Hessians, I was friends with everyone. So I started hanging out a little more with guys who were like playing basketball, and it was actually a lot of guys who were one grade younger than me. And they all started transferring a year ahead of me, even though they're a year younger than me, from junior college to Cal Poly.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I gotta start following that path. So yeah, I actually started like figuring out what classes I need to take, actually attending the classes,
Yeah.
taking notes. And then it didn't take long, right? Junior college, you just got to do that for like a year decently, and you can get out of there. So I would say that was kind of the difference I made. And then once I got to Cal Poly, I kind of kept that path going. At that point, I was living with one of the athletes I referenced that was younger than me. He was my best friend, and he was transferring up to play football at Poly. And so we roomed together, and he didn't drink, and he had a real focus of what he wanted to do with his life. He ended up playing the NFL for eight seasons.
Wow.
So watching his discipline, and I started working out with him, started playing basketball with him.
Yeah.
And that changed a lot. The one regret I do have about that time is I wish I would have struck a better balance of making that pivot in the direction I wanted to pursue while still staying loyal and connected to my friends
Yeah.
from before. And I separated for many, many years, more than I wished I would have. But that's just the way it goes. I eventually came back around, and all's good. I love all those guys, and we have a really good relationship to this day. But there's a chunk of time I wish I stayed more connected that I felt like I needed to disconnect in. Yeah.
Why do you wish that specifically?
Because they're back to my loyalty ethos. Like maybe I had a period where I wasn't loyal enough. But they've remained loyal to me, so maybe I feel guilty for that. And missing out on, some of the experiences that bind us. Because I think that's a lot for us from my age group in that environment, is we feel such a bond because of experiences we had together that were pretty intense.
Yeah.
From being jumped or had guns pulled on you or fights or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are pretty bonding experiences. So I don't know. I don't know why I carry that, but I've always just kind of carried it.
Do you think that you would have ended up in a similar or the same place if you had kept those relationships during that time? Or
I think so. I mean, I definitely think it's possible. The one thing, again, about those guys is like, even when I was the guy that was always sober when they were getting fucked up, is like they respected it.
yeah.
So there was nothing about that crew that was trying to drag me down or hold me back.
Yeah.
It was just my own kind of need to like hit a reset or just change. And I thought I needed to make it more dramatic maybe than I did.
So then you kind of commit to education in Cal Poly. Where do you go from there?
So I got my degree in political science, which I actually found, oddly enough, interesting. It was the first time I found school kind of interesting. I was never a good student. Always like ADHD, OCD, like wandering mind. Um, but like I can take tests well. That was like my saving grace. Or I can sit next to the right people pretty well, and I have good peripheral vision.
Yeah.
So I could engineer my way through stuff, and I could talk my way through stuff. So I ended up, I was going to go to law school. I took the LSAT and did well enough to get into. I was going to go to McGeorge, University of Pacific's law school. It's where Josh George went, actually. Um, but then I sat down with my senior project advisor, and he was like, really? Didn't you get like a C minus in my class? He's like, yeah, class was hard. He's like, yeah, it's gonna be a lot like that. And that was a like an odd little pivot point. It's like, yeah, I'm kind of going into it with like indifference because I don't know what else to do. And he talked me into getting my master's in business at Cal Poly. So I went to the MBA program at Cal Poly just because it's got so much more flexibility, really. And it's 2 years instead of 3. And I didn't really have a focus. I never did. Like, I never really knew what I wanted to do. So I just kept kind of trying to do the next thing that would keep doors open for me.
Yeah.
That's what I tell a lot of the younger guys or people in general is you don't need to have anything figured out. And you don't need to be in a hurry. Just keep doors open. Because you never know which door you're going to want to walk through because you keep changing.
Yeah.
And so figuring it all out too early is where you cause some pretty big stress dynamics in your life because you end up changing and all of a sudden you're not on the right path, but you were so committed to that path. So I try to keep my path broad, knowing I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I got my MBA, and then even then I was like, I still don't know what I want to do. And again, I sucked at school, particularly sucked at finance.
Yeah.
Couldn't wrap my head around it. Sat next to some smart people that were very helpful to me and worked my way through it. And then I was supposed to they let me in under the condition I take calculus. And then I talked them out of having me take calculus. And that's the only way I got through because I couldn't pass calculus.
Yeah.
So yeah, then it was a little bit of like, I still don't know what I want to do. And I can tell you, I've never figured out what I want to do. So I just kept doing the next thing. So sometimes it's easier to figure out what you don't want to do when you can't figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
So I started working. I got a job through my dad at like a small software firm in Goleta. And I'm showing up there, putting a suit on, sitting in a cubicle and going, yeah, this isn't what I want to do. And that's when I was like, I still don't, like, I have no idea what I want to do, but I started figuring out, but I'm starting to really know what I don't want to do. And this is part of it. Like, I don't want structure. I don't want someone telling me, like, where to go and how long to be there. Like, my dad was always a traveling businessman. He was never, ever home. He wasn't really part of my early years ever. And I, like, just didn't want to be that. And I remember one time, like, after, like, getting off work at that job, I saw my mom, and she was like, you look just like your dad. And I was like, okay, I'm out. Take this suit off, quit this job. Yeah. It's not what I want. Not anything against my dad. I have respect for the path he walked, but yeah. So then I just started figuring out, okay, what would fit what I want? And I just couldn't really figure it out. And then I got a job. So then I started applying to financial services companies, ironically. And I got a job at Merrill Lynch managing money for the guy who couldn't understand finance. And then I figured out I was actually kind of good at it. Like, I had an aptitude for understanding real money, just not academic money.
Yeah.
But I didn't like it. I didn't like my job. I was pretty good at it. And so I kept thinking, well, I'm supposed to follow my passions. I just haven't found my passion, which is the bullshit everyone tells you.
Yeah.
Just follow your passion. You never work your day in your life. Well, fuck. Most of us have passions. We'll never afford the shit we need or
Yeah.
want. So like my passions of playing my guitar and surfing and whatever wasn't going to give me the shit I wanted because I wanted freedom, flexibility. So I kept doing my job, and then I was like, well, maybe there's another way. So then I literally started a PhD program thinking, well, I'll be a professor. Well, that seems like a cool lifestyle. And then one of the guys that worked with me, he actually had been a professor. And he's like, it's not for you, man. He's like, you cannot fit in a box. You cannot be part of a bureaucracy. Like, you will lose your mind. And so I did it for a week at UCSB PhD program, and then I bounced. And then I got into the PhD program in Arizona, went down and visited. They were going to pay me to teach at the U of A. And I was like, nah, I can't live here. So then I started a teaching credential program. Mind you, I'm still working at Merrill Lynch.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I got to get out of here. I can't just like keep selling myself to wealthy people. It just felt soulless. And then I started working on teaching credential. Didn't have it yet, but a math job came up at St. Louis High. So the guy that couldn't pass math got the math job.
Yeah.
Teaching math at St. Louis High, and struggled with it, and then decided not to take it because like it just doesn't pay shit.
Yeah.
And I still knew like I needed autonomy. So I just kept kind of like flirting with these different avenues and realizing, no, I won't like that. And then finally I was like, I guess I'm on the path I'm supposed to be on. I don't love it, but I can do it. And so that's why they call it work. Like you're getting paid not because it's super fun. You get paid because like it's a thing that creates value.
Yeah.
So then I just kept kind of leaning into that, and then that's when my career started to take off.
So you just kind of like were like, all right, it's time to commit to the job I'm doing, and then it started actually working out for you.
Yeah, I had
a degree.
I had a couple pivots within that too. Like, I mean, I'm a hard person to manage, so I don't just like do the program that you're telling me to do. I'm gonna like, you see my jiu-jitsu, like I'm gonna try to like do it my way. So I worked at Merrill Lynch. While I was there, everyone kept telling me about this person who had left the office and got this great job for B of A up in the Monterey Peninsula. And they're just feeding her leads, and she's making all this money, and she doesn't have to do all the cold calling and all the bullshit that I hated. So I was doing seminars that no one showed up for. I'm knocking on doors. I'm cold calling. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'm going to figure out who her boss is. And I find this guy's name and number, and I call him. And I say, hey, I heard so-and-so works for you. I heard it's a great opportunity. And he goes, yeah, she just transferred last week. Her job's open. And I said, well, I was going to be in your area tomorrow, San Jose, which I wasn't.
Yeah.
I'll swing by and say hi. So I go by, and we talk about his 2 golden retrievers and the Lakers, his 2 passions, for an hour. And he says, best interview I've ever had. You're hired.
Wow.
So I got the job that everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
And then, so I moved to Monterey, and my poor wife she was going to UCSB and commuting to UCSB because when we moved to SLO, she was like still at UCSB in undergrad. I've made her move schools a bunch. So anyways, so then we moved to Monterey, and then I freaking hated the job. It was bank bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like the wrong direction, dude. It was like more structure, more management, more like fucking sit in these training meetings forever. And I was just like, I can't do it. And I did it for 9 months. And I called my boss. I was like, dude, I can't do it. He's like, you're going to be like so good at this. If you just stick with it, you're going to make a lot of money. I'm like, I hear you, but man, I just fucking hate it. So the bank side hired me to go back to SLO to work on the banking side instead of the brokerage side. And I started doing like commercial banking and stuff, which I found kind of interesting because it was something new to learn. And that's what brought me back to Slow. And then Merrill Lynch called me and asked me to come back to Merrill Lynch because they had this new higher end wealth management program. And by then I'd kind of like created a network of other professionals and stuff, CPAs and whatnot. So like, oh, we'll bring him back. So they bring me back and they want to put me through all this training. And I'm like, I'll come back and do a good job, but I'm not doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I literally, like, they sent me this training and I left it. I didn't, and the boss's boss called me. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, that's just a waste of my time. And he goes, well, with your attitude, I don't want you working for me. I'm like, what else? Okay. And he hangs up. I'm like, I think I got fired. I don't even know.
Yeah.
So then the manager calls me. He's like, yeah, you just go home. I'm like, okay. So I went home. And then like 2 days later, they call me like, all right, why don't you come back in? I'm like, so was I in a timeout? What happened? Like, basically, he got really mad at you, but we're not firing you. I'm like, okay. So then I went back, and then my business that's when my business started taking off. And in 2 years, I did really well. And then I left again. And they were not happy with me again. They were not happy with me.
I bet.
Yeah. I had formed a partnership with a guy then, and then he and I left to go open an office for UBS, a large Swiss private bank in Slow. And that's really when, like, okay, that's when I started making money. In financial services, in wealth management, I'm a big proponent of it, even though I didn't love it as like a fulfilling job. I mean, I really did cherish some of the relationships I had with my clients and always will. But it's, the pursuit of making more money for people who already have a lot of money isn't like a super like fulfilling pursuit necessarily. But one of the things I did that most people in that industry don't do is take advantage of the economics of it. So once you build a book of business in financial services, you have a revenue stream that all the other companies want you to bring to them. So when you're outside of a contractual obligation, which I was, they offer you usually like 3 times your trailing gross revenue. So at that time, I was like early 30s. What was I? I can't remember how old I was, but I was getting a check for like $450,000. And that's really, really hard to do, is to accumulate a chunk of wealth.
Yeah.
That's what keeps most people from getting ahead, is you never get that critical mass, that chunk of money that could be a down payment or whatever. So I took that, and I took the risk of moving all my clients, because if you don't move your clients and you're starting at zero, you got to pay back the bonus they gave you. And it worked. And we signed a 6-year contract. And then in the 7th year, we bet on ourselves again, and we moved to Wells Fargo Advisors and cut a very unique deal with them where we would have even way more autonomy. We'd run our own P&L. We'd sit in one of their branches, so we didn't have to be business administrators, but we kind of cut our own economics out of it. And I got a 7-figure check out of them at that time, and they're structured as loans. So they're tax-free. They're forgivable loans. So they amortize over the life of the contract. So in that case, it was a 10-year contract. So 1/120th of that forgivable loan would hit my pay stub as like phantom income. So you pay taxes on it incrementally, but you ultimately you got that chunk of money up front with no taxes. Which again, that was in 2009 or 10, which was one of the great financial dips that we've ever experienced. And so that's really what also put me in a position to like leapfrog ahead. So taking that kind of risk at those big moments is what separated me from a lot of my peers, is they were afraid to take those kind of risks. And I didn't always do it solely just so I can make more money. Like, it had to have some sort of value creation for the client too. Like, there had to be a win-win, and there was in those situations. And then the last move I made was I waited till like the first global pandemic in my life. And right as COVID kicked off, I actually left I left all my benefits, left my health insurance, left my life insurance, and started my own firm, which was a full send.
Yeah.
And it worked out incredibly well. And then that's the firm which I ended up selling to my partner. I still retain some of it, but that's largely how I kind of like worked my way into retirement.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember speaking with you maybe on that week or that day, and I was like, "What's going on, Brad?" And you're like, "Oh, I just sold my investment company or something." And I was like, "Cool."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. But what's funny about that is that you're still a pretty busy guy, you know?
Yeah. I'm busier now that I'm retired, and like I'm harder to get a hold of. I don't
Yeah.
return texts anymore because I'm never sitting at a desk staring at a computer screen and then like with my ADHD like returning texts and looking at Instagram. Like
Yeah.
and I hate talking on the phone because I did it for my whole career. So it's really hard to get me to actually like answer a phone call. And yes, I've continued to, I'm entrepreneurial. Like I like the build and creation phase of businesses. I like the creatives. I like brand creation. I like formation and strategy. So, and I've always dabbled in real estate, which has always been curious to me. I had a real estate license when I was young and I got it again recently. So yeah, I'm busy now. I serve on a board. I've served on boards in the past. This one's a paid board seat, which is kind of fun for a large construction company. And then I'm involved with San Luis Ranch. I'm one of the partners on the commercial project there. And I own a handful of multifamily properties, and I'm building ADUs, remodeling units, and fighting with the city. And yeah, it's always something. The thing about retirement is there's no problem-free life. But if you're lucky, you can make your life such that the problems you solve day to day, you don't mind, and the solutions benefit you. So most of our careers, we're like your careers, you're solving other people's problems. And the solution is creating more economic value for them, or else they wouldn't be paying you to do it. So for me now, my solutions are creating economic value for me instead of others. And they're problems I've chosen to get in the way of.
Yeah.
I'm pretty fortunate.
I'm not 100% up to date with all the things that you've put yourself in the middle of, but I've seen a couple of the projects that seem a little out of left field that you've either invested in or are you still doing those? I know there's one that was like a twisted tea type of thing.
Yeah, I got involved in a lot of alcohol companies,
Yeah.
ironically, because I was never a huge alcohol person. But yeah, so friends of mine started a brewery called St. Archer Brewing in San Diego. And they actually the founder brought me their business plan in its first draft. And I was like, bro, this ain't it. And I wasn't wrong because it was a bullshit business plan. And he had never made beer and he had never like ran a business. And like he used to make surf and snowboard movies. Like, I was like, what?
Yeah.
You're pivoting to beer? He killed it. Most successful startup brewery in the history of California. After 3 or 4 years, he sold it for like $94 million to Miller Coors.
Crazy.
And he calls me, he's like, man, I wish I was writing you a check right now. I was like, bro, you still can. Like, I mean, just because I didn't write you one doesn't mean you can't write me one. So that was probably a missed opportunity for sure. But then when he had a 3-year non-compete in the alcohol space, and when that 3 years was up, he kind of got the boys back together and started some new alcohol companies, and I participated in those. And some friends participated in those. We started a distribution company, and we started a brewery, and then he peeled away from those, which is a long story of ego and other dynamics, and started a hard seltzer company called Ashland Hard Seltzer. And so I invested in that as well. So I had the brewery and the distribution company and the hard seltzer going all together. And then that hard seltzer company kept he's just a creative too. So he kept creating new brands and new labels and new segments with the alcohol market. One was a twisted tea, and there was a new beer line, and there was wine, and there was canned cocktails called Villager. There was all kinds of offshoots of it. And then there was a merger with Ninkasi up in the Pacific Northwest. So I was kind of like part of all this, but it all splintered the way businesses often do. And there's a fair amount of bad feelings amongst a lot of people. The distribution company sold, and that was a decent outcome for where we were. The brewery's still going and actually doing fine. Ashland Hard Seltzer still exists and still sells, but it's very hard to make a profit in. And so they're kind of putting the pieces back together. So it's still an ongoing effort.
Yeah.
It's been a meandering journey. Yeah.
It's interesting. How do you, especially now, how do you split your time amongst these different projects?
So I had been in a partnership before at Greengate Ranch. I bought Greengate Ranch, which was one of my first big sends, which was 323 acres, kind of where Price Canyon meets 227. Big old horse ranch, really bitchin' property, and was completely run down and mismanaged. And a partner and I bought that together, and then we split off some pieces and sold them. And that partnership ran its course and ended not amicably. We're friends now, but it was just kind of a messy part to the end. And then after that, I was like, I'm just going to not do any more partnerships. And so I'm going to do things on my own, which I've largely done. But when I get involved in these commercial enterprises like San Luis Ranch or the alcohol, I really only get involved in a non-official capacity, meaning I don't wear any official hat. So I don't have a day-to-day, like I have to get this done thing. It's more like I have input and I can be an advisor, but I don't have like official responsibilities.
Yeah.
So that tends to work for me. Every now and then you get pulled in a little more than you want to, but I got pulled onto the board of Ashland and I extricated myself from that. There used to be a company in town called Left Lane Sports, which was an online retailer of sporting goods. I was an investor in that, on the board of that, and I just started pulling back from a lot of those things.
Yeah. Interesting. So I want to find a way to loop in the 3 lessons or Bradisms that we talked about here.
Yeah.
Because I think that I walked away from a conversation that we had thinking, wow, this would be, if we can get Brad to put this into an actionable framework, could really change some lives here.
Oh, yeah, cool. Well, they overlap, right? And some of it's kind of like in my story is, instead of pursuing your passions, which can be a misnomer for a lot of people, figure out, which is what I tried to do. I don't know that I did it like super intentionally. I just kind of like wore myself down, and all of a sudden I was like, here I am. Is figure out who has what you want and then reverse engineer how they got it. Not necessarily material goods, but like how they live their life, like how they interact with their family, the time they spend doing what hobbies, like what do they have that would make you feel fulfilled, and then follow their path or something similar to it. In fact, reach out to them and ask them for help on how to get there. So that was something I did in hindsight. And so I think a lot of that kind of carries through my story, and I encourage other people, like, take the pressure off of like this whole find your passion thing. It just may not be there for you. It isn't for a lot of people. And then the other part of that is, but when you're evaluating what to do, choose hard.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of forks in the road in your life. And the fork that leads to the most obstacles is the path. It's very Buddhist, right? The obstacles are the way. But that road is going to have less traffic on it, and it's going to lead to the greatest reward. The easy path has everyone on it, and therefore they don't have to pay you as much to get to the end of that road. So choose hard as like an overriding principle. So at every split point, it's like, oh man, that looks like, now that's the one to do then.
Yeah.
It's like the other saying is, the cave you fear to enter the most holds the treasure you most covet.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
For sure.
And then the other one is, you know, there's I was talking to Patrick and AJ about this last night before class, the difference between pleasure and joy. So in our pursuits as people, most of us are trying to distract ourselves from our own racing mind and negative thinking and self-criticism. And we do that with these fleeting pleasures. So drugs and alcohol and sex and the pursuit of wealth and envy and or violence, or it's something different for a lot of different people, but it's something that feels exciting in the moment and gives us this pleasure response. But the next one doesn't give you the same response, so you keep going deeper and deeper into whatever it is this thing is. And then you end up just feeling more hollow because you got all the things you were chasing and you feel emptier than you ever have.
Yeah.
Which is where most people hit this midlife crisis, and it's like this, holy shit, everything I thought I wanted isn't fulfilling me. The joy component of that is where I think your time is better spent. So joy comes from acts of love, acts of, you know, giving, acts of sympathy and compassion, charitable acts, hard work. That's where you get like lasting reward of feeling like you're spending your time doing the right thing. And that will sustain you. Even in the darkest times or in the lowest energy moments or when things don't go your way, that sense of who you are will sustain you. So that's the difference between pleasure and joy, according to me.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one more thing that you said to me the other day, and it was something along the lines of how we're all kind of just pretending our way through life
Yeah.
and wearing different masks.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because even just me asking you, hey, Brad, would you be willing to come on this podcast? It's funny. I mean, although Grant was the one who officially nominated you, you were on my list of people that I wanted to interview. And I think I told 2 people when I was just kind of thinking about how this would work and why this would be valuable. The first one is Seamus right before he left. I was talking to him and I was like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, man, you do it. And then I'll be the first one. And then he took off and traveled the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I told you, and I was like, what do you think of this concept, man? Of like, we all have these little things, these little words of wisdom or things to live by that I think other people could benefit from, but we're also caught up in the jiu-jitsu aspect that we never learn anything about each other. And
Right.
like, that's great.
Yeah.
Go for it.
100%.
But at the end of the day, there's still almost like a barrier to trying to learn from other people or even put yourself out there, right? Take that risk, get to know people, do those things. And maybe it is a self-made barrier where you're putting it out there, but break down this final kind of thing for me on how you think about this.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. We're all full of shit and we know it.
Yeah.
And we're pretending like we're not to everyone else. So we're all the main characters in the story that we're watching in our head, and we're presenting as if that's our real self. But there's so much duality to us. So we all are wearing a mask, and we're all pretending to be this character. And then people respond to that character, and that reinforces the mask we're wearing. And it's hard to be vulnerable and be that and your true self. And your true self is usually very critical and it's usually full of fear, unless you're like really unusually self-confident. Those people do exist. Seamus might be one of them. I mean, there's some people who just operate life without a lot of reservation or debate or constraints. But most of us have a lot of negative self-talk. And so we're presenting one thing, but we feel a different way. And then being vulnerable makes it challenging because then that's going to expose that. So it's like you don't want to lift your mask enough for someone to say, what? Yeah, that's not really you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And a lot of us have imposter syndrome thoughts too, that we're not really worthy. And I've carried all that my whole life, and I still do. I've always had a lot of like anxiety and fear and doubt and self-criticism and self-loathing. And I think most people do. And then I've also always been very good at masking it. And so no one thinks I feel those things. And I just think a lot of people struggle with that. And I think it's a gift as part of an overall package when you have that stuff that allows you to empathize and connect with other people because you see that in them. You can recognize it. So I used to fight with my personality a lot. And as you get older, you learn to make friends with your personality, the good parts and the bad parts, and accept the whole package. And if I had everything figured out, if I had no self-loathing, if I had 100% conviction in myself, I'd be an ass, right?
Yeah.
I'd be like, fuck, life's easy. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? But I don't have that figured out. I've been fortunate in my life. Like, I've got a lot of things working in my favor, thankfully, now. But I feel like I've been fortunate, so then I can be more kind of empathetic, compassionate, or see people kind of where they are, maybe a little better than some others. And that kind of goes back to one of your first questions about mentoring. Like, when I see a young person, I don't forget what it's like to be a confused young person.
Yeah.
And then I try to meet them where they are and then just be an ear for them. And I don't have all the answers, but usually they don't want the answers. They just want to know that, like, how they feel matters.
Yeah.
So to me, like, that's been the great gift of jiu-jitsu to me, is I loved coaching my kids when they were younger. Like, that was one of my passions. I did yard duty at their school and I coached all their teams. And I love young people. I loved children. And then when they outgrew me, like, they got too good for my coaching, so they went to club or they played high school. I didn't have a lot of that. And like, to this day, it's cool because when I'm around town, I run into all kinds of kids I coached over the years. And it's just neat that I have all those connections and they still remember me and it still matters.
Yeah.
But jiu-jitsu's kind of brought that back to me. I see Thad doing that too. Like, as you get older, having a mechanism to connect to generations below you is really cool. So yeah, I like that a lot. And then, jiu-jitsu brings so many broken people to the mat that everyone there has a story and their story matters.
I think the belt system in particular makes smaller steps seem achievable, right? Versus like people, I think they're really drawn to this idea of, I just got to make blue belt.
Right.
I just got to make purple belt.
Right.
I just got to do this. I'm going to be a black belt in 5 years, and then it's 15 years.
Yeah. It's always right there.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the things that draws people in. Particularly things like surfing, rock climbing, definitely contact sports, I think take your mind off other things in a way that it's hard to do with team sports sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think we have some very either broken individuals or people who are using jiu-jitsu as a means, like an outlet for different things, and everybody's there for different reasons. And that's something that's really hard to understand at the very beginning when you're ex-wrestler, white belt, young kid coming in trying to beat up on everybody.
Yeah,
Is
getting your shoulder popped out.
yeah, getting your shoulder popped out by Aaron Steed. But you know, trying to basically prove yourself, which I feel like everybody does
Yeah.
at some point. They come
Yeah.
to the gym and they feel like they have to prove themselves. But the thing that you started with in jiu-jitsu, much like life, doesn't seem like the place that you will be in 5 years or the place that you end up in, you know, down the road. Your goals change.
Yep. The reason you're doing it changes.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I started, I was like, I'm going to be the youngest old competitive black belt before I'm 35.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah,
some
you
weird
have these
goal.
things that matter.
Yeah.
And they stop mattering. And that, you know, I started, a lot of people know this, I started 2 weeks before my 51st birthday. And I always wanted to do it. I was always afraid to do it on so many levels. Not the fear of like the violence part of it, like that didn't scare me, but like more injuries. I'd already torn both my ACLs, and I already had a bad neck and bad shoulders. And so I just thought like I was done. Like it was past me. And then I always used to really not like to touch people.
Yeah.
I was a germaphobe. I didn't like going to the gym and sitting on sweaty equipment. So I just thought like, now it's nothing.
Yeah.
It doesn't even move the needle. But the thing that's cool for me about jiu-jitsu, well, among many things, but is we show up because the other people are going to be there.
Yeah.
It's the other people that are the draw. Surfing, other people are a detriment.
Yeah.
Like you show up and you're like entitled to the break by yourself. You're like, what the hell? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And as an old crusty guy, I'm like usually like a grumpy guy in the water because like I feel like I'm entitled for some fucking reason.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite. So like people bother me when I'm surfing, but I go to jiu-jitsu for the people. And then if you're lucky enough to do jiu-jitsu in a gym like ours, where it's open-minded, not a lot of politics, kind of open architecture, where Chris and Mallory are open to other people bringing their brands in, and it's just like a really cool environment to interact on many different levels.
Yeah.
And it's the community that keeps you coming.
Yeah. At this point, this podcast is just me mining all of the people in the jiu-jitsu community. Eventually, I will run out of those people.
Yeah.
Need to look for another.
But it's a good database, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of characters, a lot of very interesting stories with people doing cool stuff in their lives.
Yeah. And also, I mean, what's nice is that everybody seems to have an intersection of, you know, with Grant and you.
Yeah.
There's some intersection between where Grant must have reached out to you and said, hey, Brad, how do I deal with this thing?
Yeah.
You know, or look to you for guidance.
Yeah.
And I think that's not necessarily something that people think about when they're joining a jiu-jitsu gym.
Right.
You know? I mean, it's the only other place that I've actually really seen that. And I'm not suggesting people go out and join a church, but I think that I've seen like the way that people support each other.
Yeah.
Regardless of the religion, you know, it seems like churches bring people together.
True. It's community building.
Yeah.
It's building your family within the community, the people that you identify with and share some sort of value or priority system with.
Yeah.
So most of my best friends now are people we train with.
Yeah.
Which is super rad. And then I get to see them every day and we get to like kind of do life together, you know, in addition to pursuing this really, really hard thing, which is fucking jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I came in, like my first class, so Aaron Steed brought me in.
Yeah.
we joke about it. We went for a plate of chicken shawarma at Petra one day. That was a Thursday, and he said, "You got to come train. You'll love it." And Josh had just started, and Josh was always been a buddy of mine and a neighbor, and we surfed together. And Josh had just started, and Jono had just started, and Jono had been a friend and a neighbor, and they're all going, "You love it." I'm like, "I know," because I have a lot of buddies who were brown belts from Ventura and guys who went to Cal Poly with, and I always knew I love it, but I always just thought it was too late. And then Aaron's like, "You're coming tomorrow." And I was like, "You know what? What am I saving it for?" Like, yeah, I'll see you there tomorrow.
Yeah.
It was a Friday. John Green was teaching. Marty Kano was working the front desk. And I loved it. I bought a gi and I joined and probably trained 90% of my days since then.
Wow. Yeah.
But like you, I started off, I remember I met Chris and Mallory in Aurora Grande because we went to the next day's class Saturday in Aurora Grande when they were teaching it. And I told Chris, "Hey, if I do this, I'm going to do it. Like, I will get consumed with it and I'll be here every damn day and I will do this until I get a black belt. I'm just that stubborn." He's like, "All right." And then I thought, "Oh, yeah, then I'm going to like be the old guy that competes a lot." And I did a couple comps and it's like, yeah, it's cool. But as I get older, the reason I do jiu-jitsu keeps changing.
Yeah.
And like being good at competitions is like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, probably will do that again sometime, but it's not a motivation. Like, enjoying my time in the gym and connecting with people is my motivation, and not getting injured is a big part of that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that's a big motivation
Yeah.
after you do it for a couple of years.
Yeah, and like playing the game that's interesting to me, regardless of playing the game that the IBJJF wants me to play.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more you have to modify the game to your body that's interesting to you, or else it won't be sustainable.
Yeah. For sure. Are there any things that we haven't really touched on during this conversation that you kind of wish either more people talked about or something that you want to share?
Politics. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll listen. You talk.
No. There'll be too many people in my DMs. Well, I mean, in general, just I think we really are short on kindness in society these days. I think that, I have 3 children and they're all wonderful little humans, but just even within their age groups, they interact with the world differently. One's 25, the other one's 23, and the youngest is 19. And where they were in their social media adoption at their different ages means they communicate and identify with different social media platforms differently, and their worldview is a little bit different. So the younger you are, the more your worldview is a function of your online discourse, and people online are not as real as they are in person. It's impersonal, so they're more mean and they're more brave and they're more critical, and I just think that's seeped into our overall society. Unfortunately, it has seeped into our political discourse too. And with that worldview, that's why these younger people are so anxious and insecure, because they don't believe in the general kindness of other humans. They don't think it's real. They think what they experience online is real. And then when someone's nice to them, they think that's fake. A lot of them, not all of them. Yeah. And I just think we've lost kindness and decorum and respect as a default measure for each other. So I guess I would just say, yeah, being more kind and being more vulnerable and being more honest with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned earlier that people, I mean, especially young men, I think are struggling with, to me, it feels like to overcompensate in some way, to look more masculine or powerful, but I think that their definition maybe of masculinity or power is a little skewed.
Like, think about being a young man and like how are you going to thread that needle?
Yeah.
Because you have to have an Instagram body, and you have to have all these cool experiences that you post, and you have to get like the envy of everyone based off of those things. But you can't be toxic masculine. You have to like really find just the right level of masculinity. And then, but you also have to be like emotionally aware and emotionally in tune. And then you also have to have like perfect grades if you're going to get into any school. But you also have to be super cool if you're going to get in the right frat. And like, it's just like one fucking thing after another. Like, how are you going to thread that needle?
Yeah.
If you're the average insecure young man? Like the expectation society puts on you is ridiculous. And then if you look out into the future of like, how am I going to make it as a provider as a young man? Like, the economic system is so skewed to make that so daunting.
Yeah.
There's no wonder they're struggling. And so many of them are, and just kind of receding and pulling back or going over the top in the other direction.
Yeah.
It ain't easy.
Yeah. One of the concepts of this, in particularly for me, is just trying to find the little bite size, chunks of wisdom that I can pull from each person, where it's like, if you could help somebody by giving them one thing they could do differently tomorrow, right? Or a couple of things.
Yeah.
What would those things be for you?
Well, the other theme I think I try to impart to my kids, my son in particular, but all young people, is having grace for yourself, forgiveness for others. Because when we forgive others, even if someone wronged us, right? If we choose to forgive them, that's the gift we've given ourselves. It has nothing to do with what they deserve. It's what you deserve. So as long as you're holding resentment, you're holding the poison, they aren't. So learning forgiveness for peace of mind, but as you learn to forgive and accept people for their flaws, you learn to accept you for your flaws. So when you drop the judgment of others, you reduce the judgment of self.
Yeah.
And that's where you develop grace for yourself. In the process of befriending yourself is a lifelong journey that will ebb and flow. But if you can become a good companion to yourself, then you can start enjoying your days.
Yeah.
More often. But it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were easy, the monks wouldn't be chanting in caves all day long. Like, enlightenment's a motherfucker.
Yeah.
So again, grace, right? Like, accept all your flaws and accept other people's flaws, and then have grace through all of it.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Grant, which is, if you could nominate the next guest that you would like to see on this podcast, either someone within our circle,
Yeah.
or someone outside of it, as long as I can look to you to get their
Yeah.
on here, who would you like to see show up as a mentor?
Well, I mean, there's several names that come to mind. I'm going to throw out one that's more of a long shot.
Okay.
Chris Lovato,
Yeah.
to me, is the catalyst by which we all know each other. And he brought Jiu-Jitsu to the Central Coast. And he did it in a format that's unique within the Jiu-Jitsu culture, in my opinion, by being a little more free-form and open-minded and kind of casual about the typical dogma of Jiu-Jitsu, right? So, and he's had a fascinating life and is a fascinating human. So who has affected more people's lives in our community than him?
Yeah.
And then the other one I would say that I hold in high esteem for the quality of his character and has also mentored and given to this community immensely is Aaron Steed. A lot of people know about some of his charitable giving and the donation of time to women in abusive relationships and all the stuff he's done. But most people don't know the full extent of it. And I think the more you peel it back with him, the more people will be, would learn a lot from his resiliency and his persistence in his life, his personal life, his business life. And in spite of all the challenges he's faced and continues to face, he shows up and he works hard and he does it with a smile, and he's always got a handout to give to someone who needs it. You will run through a lot in our gym because there's one after another, like Jeremy, like his Jeremy story and who Jeremy is as a man, I think is awesome. Like if you peel it back with Jeremy, you're going to get the same thing. Like, man, what an impressive person this is. So yeah, there's tons of them. Sonny Gerber, like they're all like neat dudes, man.
Yeah. I'm gonna put them all on a text chain with you and say, Brad, he nominated 12
all you
people on this podcast.
Yeah, get in there.
He's next.
It's like a challenge.
Yeah,
but it's the Alec Podcast Challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny when we Chris Williams, who he was on the first episode of this, him and I have been playing with this new move, which he calls the Making Mentors Podcast Lock, until we figure out if it's actually out there.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's a good group of guys, and I think that we all have a lot of stuff to learn from each other. And I mean, this podcast is not a jiu-jitsu podcast per se, but it is a thread that runs through most of us.
Yeah.
Right. Final question, Brad. What would you like to be remembered as?
Someone who tried.
Yeah.
Like just kept trying. Like I really, really try to be better than I was. And I try to be a good father, and I try to be a good husband, and I try to be a good friend, and I don't get it right all the time. And I'm learning to try to be better to myself, and I get that wrong a lot. But I keep showing up, and I keep trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so much for agreeing to come on the podcast and let me pick your brain for all of the wisdom that you've shared today. And I'll have to invite you back, and we'll do it maybe at Slow Ranch next time.
Yeah.
So,
that'd be cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Brad.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you for joining us.
You bet.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Making Mentors podcast. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Please drop a like, comment, or follow on your favorite platform. And thank you so much for following my journey and supporting me and all those who are willing to share their stories on this channel. Until next time, cheers.